Would everyone please rise and join us to sing God Bless America, please? This morning.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to come together and enjoy one another's company and focus on the work that we can do to benefit others. We ask that you bless our time together, strengthen and nourish us with this food, and thank those that have prepared and served it to us. Keep your hands over us, protect us as we go here and about, and be with all those that are not with us today. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. Mike, any introductions of guests this morning?
Good morning, Emmaus Rotary, and our only guest, other than our speaker today, is Jeff Lake, who's back at this table back there. Welcome, Jeff, this morning. Good to have him here. And Dean, I think you're introducing our speaker today, correct? Dean? Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I've heard this morning at the desk that Jeff has become a member of Emmaus Rotary because he's been here so often, so you don't have to introduce him anymore as a guest. Okay? I'm just joking with Jeff. All right, guys. Recognition dinner is at Bear Creek on June 27th. Please get your, where is Jeff? Please get your information to Jeff. He's not here today, but just send it to him via email. The breakfast is for the president's changeover. It's the same day that morning. So come see Steve become president of the Emmaus Rotary.
About the bricks that day as well.
Are we doing the bricks on the 27th also?
Do that morning, yeah. I'd give me a moment.
I'll use, I don't know who the names are for the bricks.
One of the things that we do is when we have our fellow Rotarians who have passed away, we install bricks at the Remembrance Garden. Right now we actually have 4, and we've been holding off doing this because of weather and so on. I suggested that we do it on the changeover day. We have a number of things going on, might as well throw that in there. We have a morning meeting, passing the gavel in the morning, and then we'll go out to the Remembrance Garden, and then we have the
board meeting immediately.
Oh, that sounds like fun too. So maybe we won't be doing that day. On that day?
Yeah, 27th.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that.
You didn't ask.
Scratch
Okay, hey, it was really nice seeing everybody this time. I'll get back to you on when we're putting the bricks.
Sorry about that. I didn't have that on my list of things this morning, Mike. Forgive me. Guys, I'm really proud of you. I'm going to tell you why. Yesterday we met with the 5 service organizations in Emmaus. We're going to be doing, we haven't come up with what we're going to call it, feeding the children who need to be fed in Emmaus.
Breakfast club.
What?
Breakfast club.
It's a lunch club, so it's going to be difficult to call, but that's a good idea. Anyway, we met with the 5 service organizations and with Beth Laura, who's Ashley Laura's mom, who's the director of the Bethany Bible Food Bank. The reason I'm saying this is each of the service organizations that were there, Linus, Alliance, Kiwanis, Masons weren't there. They're all struggling with membership. And when I mean struggling, they're down 5 to 10% over last year, which is down over the year prior. And I am happy to say that we're at least staying steady for this year. So I felt really good when they were talking about that. Cindy looked at me and said, "Oh my God, that's great." We are a vibrant club, and let's keep going that way. And when Steve becomes president, let's make him proud and get some more new members for him. Okay. No, wait, Cindy, that wasn't funny.
I only laughed because he looked at me. Just looking for approval.
Any announcements from the floor? And I'll start with Bill.
Okay. Foundation, we are now down to about 5 or 6 weeks to the end of the year, so for those that have contributed, thank you very much. For those that haven't, please check. I've said many times, check your badge. If there's no sticker on the badge, either I screwed up or you haven't donated up to the E-Ray amount, so if you do, that'd be great. Second thing, Jeff Boyer was kind enough to loan this to the club. This is that new retired mentality book I've talked about. If anybody wants to borrow it to read it, please see me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Mark.
Yeah, I just want to put another plug in for the motorcycle poker run that we're going to have Saturday, June 29th. It will be hosted at Blackman Cycle, just down the road here. This year, the beneficiary is Tales of Valor, which raises and trains dogs to give to veterans that are dealing with post-traumatic stress issues, etc. Really appreciate the support thus far. I know we tap the club a lot to get involved, but you know, it's a service organization and we give from abundance. You know, Bryce Ruggieri, who worked very hard with a number of other people for the Beef and Beer event, mentioned to me that, and he wouldn't tell me who it was, which I'm glad, but he mentioned that someone actually said, you know, why would I come out to your event and spend $50 to have a beer and a beef sandwich or something? But you know, that's not what these events are about. They're about giving back from our position of abundance and helping those that are in need. So I do appreciate the club's continued support of these types of programs and others, and we hope to see you on the 29th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Gary, and then we'll have Cindy.
So obviously you guys have seen the emails, but Saturday, Hillside School, 8:30 a.m. We're going to start. Bring your favorite lawn trimming implement, whatever it is. We're going to be doing the bushes as normal, the flower beds, weeding. We're putting in a new flower bed, so there'll be something a little bit different. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like when we're done. So I appreciate all the help you get, even if it's only a drive-by. You can only come by for a little bit. That's all the help will be appreciated. Looking forward to it. See you Saturday morning.
Donuts and coffee, Gary?
Usually Hillside usually
My
provides.
favorite influence is a donut.
Cindy?
Mark your calendar, on Tuesday, I don't know what that date is.
June 24th?
21st.
No, this coming Tuesday.
21st.
Okay, May 21st. At 3 o'clock at Don Juan's in Macungie, our teachers group that we're starting for Rotary is expanding to add some middle school and other schools, and they're going to try an early happy hour and encouraged us to bring any members that we have or any prospective Rotarians. So we'll be getting something out, but they just confirmed yesterday.
Thank you, Cindy. Any other announcements? All right, here we have none. The raffle, you had the raffle this morning. Ready?
Good morning, Sleepy Rotary.
1960.
So, I think it would be appropriate that our speaker do the first draw.
So,
And I'm told that there are 4 tickets that were left at the table because there weren't enough people, but go ahead. We'll just read the last thing.
963.
No, that's it.
963.
I had 962.
963, going once, going twice.
Oh, no, I don't think she made it.
I think she was fine.
All right, we'll let her go.
That's a 2-hour fine.
There you go. Congratulations, Sue. And so you can. Wait a minute, that's not what it says. Sorry. Go ahead, Sue. No, don't grab the money. Grab the ticket. There you go. The number is 950. There you go.
Congratulations, John.
Good job, John.
So congratulate Dave. He's leaving on a, what is it, an 1,800-mile ride on your motorcycle next week?
Yeah, next Friday, so I'll be here next week. Yep. Going to the Windy Nine in Ohio. Last one. You can do that, sir. Go ahead, Craig. You can pull it.
What we got? 1942.
Is that your birthday?
Mario, congratulations.
All right. Got all 3.
Sergeant at Arms, are you ready, sir?
There you go, Mary. You guys do that ticket, please. Oh, okay. you guys finished? We seem to have a sparse crowd today, so unless you guys are loaded with happy dollars, I'm gonna get creative. First thing I'm going to do is give Sue and Eric, that's a fine, a Just Say No to Fine card for their excellent work for getting the Rotary Conference rolling. Just remember, I know who received these, so expect a fine within the next couple of weeks.
I'm ready.
JP was late. I got money from Gary because he's leaving early. There's a gentleman at this table that has a business name on a shirt and trying to hide it with his badge. So that will be a fine, probably about $10 that you can got. This way he doesn't have to reach into his pocket. He might have happy dollars later, I'm hoping. I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed. Megan, the only lady at this table.
Find the rest of them.
I'm happy about it. It's good because the rest of the table is in the part of all you need. That's the only thing. I have a budget, it's coming down to the end of the year, so I gotta work on things. Maribel. You think you win money?
So, yes.
How much did you win?
$1.
Well, isn't the truth?
Right?
Oh, yeah, there is one.
Okay, all right, you're the only couple here today.
Mario, easy come, easy go.
Easy come, easy go, Any happy dollars today? Steve?
So, kind of a typical morning at Emmaus Rotary Club. As some of you guys know, our assistant district governor lost his keys at the district conference. So trying to be polite, I reached over to him this morning and said, "Hey, did you ever find your keys?" He went, "Did I brush my teeth?" Evidently, neither two of those things have happened.
Yikes. There's a lot of background noise.
Mark?
So I'm very pleased to share that I'm heading over to Europe for 6 weeks. I'll be back for the recognition dinner and of course the poker run, but yeah, I'm gonna look forward to heading over to Czech Republic and Italy.
Oh, nice.
So, we'll see you soon.
Steve?
I have $2 happy because our son is home for 2 weeks, and he says he needs to help me clean out the junk in our home.
Keep you hiring them out.
Courtney?
I have a couple happy dollars. My daughter runs for the Emmaus High School track team, and she just made it to districts. And last time she ran a 2 mile, and tomorrow she'll be running, or today she'll be running a mile. And my son Max did a National History Day project for Alma Mass. He was nominated to go on to districts, and he went to districts, and he said, "Mom, do you think I'll make it to states?" And I was like, I don't know. He and his team, and he made it to states, and then he's like, "Mom, do you think I'll make it past states?" I'm like, "No, you're really not going to make it past states." And he made it to nationals.
You have to just keep being negative.
Two announcement dollars for those who would like to just veg out and just relax a little bit. Just a reminder that the Wildland Sojourn is on the weekend of the 22nd. It's the week before the poker run, so it doesn't conflict with that. But if you want to just sit your butt in a canoe or kayak, or just float down the river and relax and enjoy it, please check the rack cards out on the table.
Thank you, Bill.
JP?
I know I brag a lot about my kids, so I'm here to stand up and say I don't always brag. I'm coaching James's baseball team this year. We are 0 for 70% of the way through the season. That means we haven't won a game yet. James has stagnated in terms of getting better. He is not progressing the way he normally does every year. And in spite of all that, I'm still very happy to be out with them on beautiful spring days, teaching them the great sport of baseball. You truly can still have fun even when you're not doing so well. So just so you don't think I only ever tell you about the good stuff. The less than stellar stuff.
Probably brain bad for a while.
And I have two happy dollars. I was down in Bethany Beach Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, so I'm happy to come home to sunshine because it sucked.
Thank you, Don. All right, moving right on. Dee, I'm going to ask you to come up and introduce our special guest this morning.
Phone to open. Oh well, I'll have to look at the four-way test. Good morning, everybody. I'm really honored to introduce my friend who, the truth is, I met her through our children. Our sons met when they were in elementary school a long, long time ago. And being amazing young men, they always talked about how they wanted to make the world a better place, especially her son. Unfortunately, her son was taken a little too early to really do that good in this world. And but Prabha decided to continue and to make a foundation honoring what he wanted to do. So she created this foundation who is it fair to everybody? It really is, because it's for every child. And actually every adult, and to give them a way to make the world a little bit easier to navigate through, and to give them the tools to navigate through it. She started in elementary schools, mostly in Allentown School District, but has gone on to include prisons, include schools, and hopefully maybe start in our own school district, because they really have a need and they've been trying to address it here. But anyway, so I wanted to let you know that she really does the four-way test, much more than being a non-Rotarian. And she actually proves all three things, because she did, through her concern for others and making the world a better place. We're very fortunate to have her move back to this area to do that. So without further ado, because I'd like her to be able to explain her own way, thanks. This is Prabha.
Thank you, Dee. And thank you all for having me here. My name is Prabha, and I run the Pratyush Sinha Foundation. So Pratyush, my son, and Nick are really close friends. And after he passed, obviously, I was devastated. I didn't want to get out of bed, didn't want to do anything. Basically, the thought of killing myself. But I know Pratyush wouldn't want that. So the only way I realized that I could go on was to honor his memory and do what he would have wanted to do in this world. He was still figuring out what to do in his life. But for me, I had regular jobs. And he always knew that I loved yoga, that I felt complete and whole when I did yoga. So the last few years of his life here on this earth, he was always telling me, Mom, you need to start living your life and do what you love to do. And I guess, he even had a premonition, and he would tell me, Mom, you need to focus on yourself rather than focus on Papa and I. So, for some reason, the day it happened, I was able to immediately decide that I was going to do something with yoga, because that's what he wanted me to do. And it took me a while. It took me a while to really get myself together and get going. We moved back into this area. We'd been in Charlotte, North Carolina. We moved back into this area. And I started teaching some free yoga classes at like the Boys and Girls Club, carrying place in our town. We'd go into schools, offer free yoga. And then the demand was so much that obviously I couldn't do it all. I could do it for free, but I couldn't expect people that needed to pay their bills and get food on their tables, pay their rent, mortgages, to do it for free. So I started to, I'm Indian and I love to cook, so I started to cater to pay my teachers. But then there's only so much of that you can do. So out of need and the demand for what yoga brings to children and adults, I started thinking of ways we could expand this work. So how many of you here know what yoga is? Okay, great. So, and if you don't know what yoga is and you want to experience yoga, I'm going to start my job right now. So we do our biggest fundraiser, Lehigh Valley Yoga Festival, which is on July 13th at Moravian College. So check it out. And we have 5 different venues of events, and that's all I'm going to speak about it. You can ask me later if you want any more details. But and I quickly also realized that the schools were not going to give us time during the school hours and make us part of the school curriculum. So the goal of yoga is to bring the body, mind, and breath together. What that does is basically helps ground you, balance you, and you're connected to the present moment. Because if you're present in your body, your mind is not going to be stuck on some negative experience, negative emotions in the past or the future. So I realized that they were not going to give us 30 minutes, 45 minutes of the school time to come and do poses with kids. So at that time, around 2014, I got exposed to something called mindfulness. So anybody here know what mindfulness is? Yeah. Right? So really, really powerful. I have been a meditator for a long time. Coming from India, having this as part of my heritage, I was supposed to know how to meditate, but really sucked at it. Really, really sucked at it. Because the minute I sat down and tried to find that clear mind, guess what? Just like all of us, everything else would come and flood my mind. There was no way I was going to find that quiet space. But then mindfulness came into my life. And it was just the most amazing thing personally, because I'm a simple person, and I like things to be really simple. I don't like any complications. So mindfulness, and you guys can have these little cheat sheets that I have. John Kabat-Zinn, he's a guy who coined the term mindfulness. He says, mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. And he's actually added a line to this now. He says, as if your life depended on it. And we know that stress can kill. So mindfulness basically is for you to have a healthy life where you are present, living your life, rather than being stuck in the past or the future. We have this negativity bias in our brains, and it's natural because that's how our brains are wired. Our brains are wired to go into that fight, flight, freeze mode every time we sense some threat, because we are part of the animal kingdom. Survival is our #1 instinct, fear and survival. But we are human beings. We have higher abilities, executive brain functions. But sometimes we can't even access those when we are in that fight, flight, freeze mode, when our emotions and our thoughts are all over the place, that we cannot bring those aspects, the higher aspect of our being human into effect. So with the kids, unless we can teach them how to process their thoughts and emotions, no learning can happen. And unfortunately, what's happening in the schools is that the administrators are so focused, including us. We're so focused on how our kids, what the grades are. The schools want higher academic scores. And when the kids are in those heightened states of fight, flight, freeze modes, at that time, the hippocampus, which is a tiny bean-shaped organ in the middle of the head, it's totally out of track. So even if they hear what the teacher's telling them, they cannot retain it. They will not remember it when they need to remember it. So it's really, really important for all of us to be aware of what's happening in our brain. So this ability to stay present, mindfulness, is all about finding a more healthier lifestyle and well-being in our own lives. So this is not just for kids. Kids, of course, benefit extensively because we're teaching them life skills, transformative life skills. So if we start them in elementary school, they're going to, and keep supporting them, because this is not something that you practice one day and you're done. This is a practice. You have to do it every day. You have to remind yourself. One of my teachers, Sharon Salzberg, and some of you might have heard her name, she says that mindfulness is really easy. It's just hard to remember to do it. So mindfulness you bring into your life at all, you can bring it into anything you do. Brushing your teeth. Lexa was talking about Grand Canyon, being in the Grand Canyon. I've been there myself, so that to me was mindfulness, that sense of wonder and being present, being part of this beautiful universe, our world, that joy, that is mindfulness. And all it takes is to bring yourself in your bodies, connect to yourself, quiet that mind down, get out of the drama that we are engaged in most of the time, our brains, and become present. And yes, the present can be very difficult. As you saw, just talking at the beginning, grief is a big part of my life. But in spite of grief, I found meaning and I found joy. So if I were fighting that grief, I was resisting that grief, or I was just stuffing that down, and I wouldn't be able to speak here. But I've learned to live with that grief. So life is difficult. And we can have the most perfect lives, but the world out there is not pretty. So trauma can happen in lots of ways. We know there's, of course, primary trauma, then there's secondary trauma, generational trauma, trauma being a woman, especially in a third country, well, even in this country, right? So women, we face a lot of trauma. If it's not to us, it's to friends, family members. But knowing how to process that, because we get stuck in it and we need to let it move through us. So I'm going to do a little practice with you. How much time?
20 minutes.
Oh, good. All right, so I'm going to invite you guys to just sit comfortably. Sit up, kind of upright, yeah? And then maybe closing your eyes or just looking down in front of you. Just become aware of gravity. So your body responding to gravity, so feeling the weight of your body on the chair, your feet on the ground. Maybe the sensations in your hands, your feet. Maybe certain areas in your body are calling for some attention, so just notice them, acknowledge it. You don't have to try to fix anything right now. Just be aware of it, notice what it feels like. And then let your mind take in the center line. So maybe your spine, maybe your core. It's becoming aware of the rise of the spine. And noticing what that feels like. And then seeing that interplay between the pull of gravity and the lift that comes up from that awareness of the spine. Letting go even as you rise up. So an effortless awareness here. And then as you follow that rise and fall, become aware of the breath rising and falling. The in-breath rising, the out-breath releasing. And from that awareness, just finding presence. Presence in the present moment. So as you inhale, feeling the lift, the expansion, with the out breath, releasing and letting go. And then slowly coming back to your body, to the sounds in the room. And then softly allowing your eyes to come open. So it doesn't take long to find that center, to connect to the center. Can be as brief as 30 seconds, 1 minute. So we take this, so my focus was just the kids and bringing this into classrooms, especially for at-risk populations. And I've actually amended how I think about the at-risk. So we started in Allentown because I was living there, and all the people I knew, the teachers, administrators were in Allentown because I taught yoga in the west end of Allentown. And then realizing that I wanted to do this mindfulness in the classrooms. started exploring, was introduced to an organization actually called Mindful Schools, so got trained in it myself, got my teachers trained into it, and through individual efforts, we were able to, now we're actually in every elementary school in Allentown. And we are also in one of the high schools, and we at Liberty High School in Bethlehem. So our area of focus is the whole of Lehigh Valley. And I talked about at risk. Every person is at risk. And especially every kid. Doesn't matter what kind of family you come from. It could be from the most loving family, have whatever you wish for, and still be at risk. Because if you don't know how to process your thoughts and your emotions, you become at risk. You're prey to our biggest enemy, our own mind, because it can lead you on the path of destruction. Unfortunately, that's the reality. So whether it's Allentown School District or it's East Bend School District, every kid is an at-risk kid. So while the funding for Allentown has been a little easier to find, it's not been, like, there's no funding, unfortunately, for school districts like East Bend and Parkland, because they just think that, oh, they don't need them, these kids don't need that support. But every kid needs that, to be taught these life skills. And these life skills, let me tell you, they're more important than the math skills or the reading skills, because this is what's going to keep them alive. And if they know how to process their thoughts and emotions, they can do well no matter what. And with our efforts to reach the kids, I realized then that you couldn't just help the kids, because even if we're introducing it to these practices to them in the classroom, they're going out into the world, their families, their communities. And that's how we got started in the prisons. We got involved in community centers, churches, and recovery centers. So our effort is to just bring awareness amongst community members, such as the present group here, so you realize how important this is. And there's an old African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. And let me tell you, it's true. Our social structure has changed so much that we're no longer a village. And unfortunately, that with the advances of social media and all these new technologies we've lost the human connection. And that human connection is so important for the kid to feel safe and secure. I was just last week at the Trexler Park, and there was a family of 5, 3 kids and parents. And the youngest was like 6 or 7. Each one of them had a phone in their hands while they're walking the park. So for me, like walking the park is a mindfulness exercise, because I'm aware of myself walking and what's happening around me, listening to the birds chirping. That could be your exercise. Of course, sitting down even for 30 seconds and bringing awareness to your breath, or anything that you choose. Like John Kabat-Zinn says, in a particular way, on purpose, on focusing on something. So art, any form of art, cooking, brushing your teeth, all these could be your mindfulness exercise. So instead of thinking of starting to plan your day, you're focusing on just the act of the brushing, the the taste of the paste, you know, those kind of things. So, and every day is a new opportunity. Every breath is a new opportunity. I used to do a formal sit in the morning, usually in bed, because if I got out of bed, then my dog is all ready for his walk. So I would wake up and quietly do my practice. It's quiet anyway. But now I have, and on my walk, I put my headset on because I wanted to make most of that time and listen to something that I'm going to learn from. And till I realized that I was not practicing what I was preaching. So I started to, now when I walk, I don't have my headset, and I'm like my dog. Of course, not being on every bush, but besides that, I'm very curious about my environment. And this started like in the winter, so it's been like a totally new spring for me. Noticing how the trees are changing day by day. It's, even in the winter, seeing the stark beauty in those barren trees, and now with the flowers, and the flowers are now beginning to fall or disappear, and then the leaves arising. So it's been a beautiful journey, and I mean, I'm almost 60, so I've had 60 years of this, but I never witnessed this changeover from winter to spring like I have done this year. So life is wonderful if we just start to notice. So you don't even have to think of it as mindfulness. Just the simple act of noticing, being present in your own life, not somebody else's life. The only person we can make a difference to is ourselves. And we go do this with the teachers, because in the school, the connection with the teachers is really the most important piece of the puzzle. Because we can see in the classrooms where the teacher has bought in and has incorporated mindfulness in their lifestyle, it's a totally different classroom compared to a classroom where the teacher is not being mindful and doesn't buy into the mindfulness. So we can just tell from outside the room how the teacher in the classroom is, because it's totally different atmosphere in there. So we do this with the teachers, and for the most part it's working. We're not telling them to even start practicing formal mindfulness in the classrooms. What we do is incorporating it in their own lives. So how they can bring it into their own lives, and then there's going to be a spillover. So if they're more present, if they can get out of their own traumas, these heavy backpacks of experiences that we carry all the time with us, and we're not even aware, the experience in the classroom is going to change for them and for the children. Because if the teacher is more present and is not reacting to what's being presented, because the children are coming from all kinds of environments, and we don't know in what condition they come into the classroom. So especially in Allentown School District, we find that these kids have experienced all kinds of trauma, which gets heightened because of poverty. So these, and if the teachers are not being mindful of what's happening in their own minds, they cannot address what the children are bringing in. So a child might just be wanting a soft, loving touch or look from a teacher, and if the teacher is too self-absorbed, they're not going to get that. So it's in the same way you know, in a home, if your child is crying, you want to be there for the child rather than, you know, stuck in your own head. So in the same way, teaching is a tough profession. So we're trying to bring this awareness to the teachers and administrators in the schools too. And in Emma's, in East Bend School District, we've done some yoga, free yoga at different schools. Somehow the funding hasn't come through. Lincoln Elementary School, which is in Emma's, they've been reaching out to me constantly, and I've been struggling to find funding for them. They tell me that amongst the East Bend schools, they are actually, the school population there is very much akin to Allentown school population. So their need is much more extensive than maybe some of the other schools, like for example, the Willow Elementary here. But there I disagree. I feel like every school needs it. So hopefully in the near future, I'm hoping that we can get some interest from East Bend School District in this subject and get the community involved, because that's how it happened in Allentown. I got the community involved, and you know, people reached out. You know, we were able to get grants from Trexler Trust, Baker Foundation, from Lehigh Valley Community Foundation. So, you know, that's how it happened, because of individuals stepping forward and saying, hey, this is important. So in the same way, I think in East Bend, that community involvement is important to get this education into the schools, which is really, really crucial and can make a world of difference in the lives of the kids. So, questions? Yeah.
First off, thank you so much for what you're doing. And I suspect that there's an opportunity here because our club is actually working with the school district on lunches and so forth at Lincoln Elementary. So there may be some synergy there on the horizon.
Yeah.
Question for you. You mentioned earlier trying to get all the garbage out of your head. I know when you're doing meditation, there's talk about like a sound or a word to repeat. Is that also?
Yeah, that's part of
I have
it.
difficulty with that. If I sit still, I just have a hard time pushing the junk out of my head.
Right. So I think I didn't finish the story of how, like, as a meditator, I sucked till I came into mindfulness, and then I realized I didn't have to fight my mind. All I had to do was observe what was coming up. So it's like, you know, a thief comes into your house, and you know that that person is a thief, and the thief knows that you are watching them. Guess what? They're going to have a harder time stealing from you. In the same way, when you watch your thoughts, not getting entangled in them, but just being aware of the thoughts that are coming up. Eventually, they're going to dissipate because you're watching them. And you build that space between the thought and yourself. Because we're not our thoughts. Yes, thoughts are a part of us, but there's like, we have over 50,000 thoughts a day, and more than 60–70% of the thoughts are repetitive thoughts. And that's how we are wired. We are wired to think, but we are not just our thoughts. We're more than our thoughts. So that awareness of just what's coming up, believe it or not, I've experienced it. Once you start to watch your thoughts as separate from you, the process slows down. Sometimes it's harder, of course, depending on what you're going through at that time. And I actually use what you said, like affirmation kind of sentence, word, just repeating it, something to hold on to. as an anchor. So we can use the breath as an anchor, a word as an anchor, any kind of positive affirmation. So I do that. When I'm most disturbed, that's what I do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Please feel free to come up afterwards and ask her any questions you have. All right, we're going to finish the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,